Hi, guys, and welcome to The Devil Made Me Read It, where we discuss books that probably would have gotten us burned at the stake. Today, we are going to be talking about The Life Impossible. Matt Haig, who is one of my favorite authors, it's his new book, just published in September of last year, 2024. And I'm really excited to talk about it with you guys. Today's episode will have light spoilers that I will drop the time codes in for in the comments section. Keep your eye out, but it should be pretty light. I'm not going to be making any major reveals. Forgive the curls today. They're going to be doing whatever they want. So today's book, again, The Life Impossible. Let's get into it. I love Matt Haig. I need to say this first. You probably have heard of him before in some capacity, whether or not you've read his books, but The Midnight Library is one of the books that he's extremely popular for, has become very popular for. Love that book. We'll talk about it another time maybe. But essentially, I come away from Matt Haig books feeling like I've explored my soul a little bit, but also like I've had a little kind of run-in with my favorite hosts from the British Bake Off. Like, it's such a soothing, comforting writing style. And the way that he explores really intense subjects, I think is really expertly balanced with his ability to just make you feel cozy all the way through. Let's talk a little bit about why I chose this book for our little book club here, our little Devil Made Me Read It. I find it really hard to find compelling stories written from the viewpoint of a character that is significantly older than like what is beautiful, trendy, etc. So this story covers the sort of explores the later life of Grace Winters, who's a retired school teacher. We'll get into more of her kind of backstory in a moment. But she's the main character. She's in her 70s. I believe she's 70, 72, somewhere around there. And I literally can't name a single other book that I've read in the last 5 years that I've even come across that felt compelling enough to pick up, that featured a woman in her later life, and presented her with this kind of heroic dilemma that we usually see being bestowed upon like coming of age men and women, those kinds of stories, you know, where they have all of this youthful energy and this, maybe they're a little bit jaded because, I don't know, their high school bully was mean. I don't know. But I think it's a very, very, very different thing to engage in a story that whose driving factor is a later life point of view. We don't get a lot of those. They're usually side characters. They're usually deemed not important, especially women. We get the Gandalfs in literature. We get the Gandalfs in movies and stuff as well, where these compelling older men are are at the wheel of their own stories in a lot of ways. But I think we, outside of like strict rom-com, and like when I say that, I'm thinking just movies. The Calendar Girls with Judi Dench. It usually is the only one that's coming to my mind right now, unless we go into like some Queen Elizabeth I or Queen Elizabeth II biopics. It's usually that these fictional characters do not have this late in life kind of perspective in the center of the action. If they are telling the story, I feel like it's usually a recountance of a recountance? I feel like it's usually a retelling or a memory of their youth, their younger lives. Think The Notebook, right? Allie is older in that book. As the narrator, also spoiler, but I don't know how to spoil The Notebook for you at this point. If you don't know the way it ends, then that's on you. I believe 2 or 3 decades have gone by. But Allie in The Notebook is the older woman telling the story of Allie the younger. This is not that. And so I just need to praise Matt Haig for really centering a septuagenarian in this fantastical story. Now, similar to our last book, my last video. This book explores magical realism, so it blends kind of genre, in my opinion, extremely well. But if that's not really for you, I swear this isn't where we're going to be going for the rest of our time together. We will explore different story formats and plot styles. But with all of that said, let's dive in, shall we? So this book starts with one of Grace's ex-students, Maurice. As I remember, and I'm telling you now, Grace is an high school maths teacher. And it seems like she had all of the passion for her subject that in a way that enabled her to impart that kind of excitement for her subject to her students. And as a math teacher, props to her. I also do, as a side note, want to say that it seems like Matt Haig really loves mathematics, because several of his characters in several of his books are either math teachers, professors of some kind, or math plays heavily into kind of the plot in some way or another. That's a side point, but it is a funny Easter egg for me personally. But Grace Winters, based on the way that Maurice is talking to her, and later on the way that Grace kind of discusses and thinks through her own experiences, I can tell that she was that English teacher that all the gay boys loved. I know I just said she's a math teacher, but we're talking English teacher energy. Stay with me. Every gay boy, and most of probably just nerds, like the kind of left out folks. I'm sure there's an English teacher for everyone, whether it's an English teacher, a science teacher, a drama teacher, a PE teacher, a coach. We all have that kind of experience where this adult in our formative years really matters a lot to us. And therefore, when Maurice, in this case, is in a moment of peril or kind of just crossroads, is it too early can you be 21 and have a quarter life crisis? I'm not sure yet. So Maurice has messaged his high school math teacher and asked for just kind of like a kiss on the forehead digitally. Tell him everything's going to be okay. Tell him he's not going to, drown in all of this crap that he's feeling. And I think we can all relate to that pretty deeply. I literally still stay in touch with my English teacher from high school because similar kind of motions during my coming out. She was a really big part of that for me, emotionally, whether she knows it or not. And so I think it makes total sense that Maurice is like at rock bottom, so he feels, and is just looking for that guidance from a mother figure that cared for him enough to imprint that care so many years after high school. And that finds Grace in a mood to write a book. And the whole book that we read from there on is essentially a manuscript that Grace has written to document and share her experience specifically with Maurice about her last kind of couple years of life. Some stuff has been going on. So when the top of this manuscript, she emails him this manuscript, and that's formatted in the same way as Maurice's note email originally starts us off with. So it mimics that. But then the rest of the document, the PDF attachment that she's sent the PDF document that she's sent Maurice in this email, is our book. So we open this document, we read the book, and we find Grace living an extremely apathetic life. She has lost her husband a couple years ago, Carl. She feels extremely guilty about something in their past together. She feels extreme guilt and still is carrying extreme grief for the death of her young son, Daniel, many decades prior. And it's just carried her into this life of almost jadedness. She describes herself as not being depressed, but just not being able to find joy in anything. So TV, food, music, soft textiles, nothing is giving her that like feeling of being excited by life, which I think in turn is really this feeling of being connected to life. It's in our small joys that we feel alive. You go on a roller coaster ride and you get off of it, and after feeling like you might die, and you say, man, I feel alive. And it's because it truly is. It requires those moments of joy, not always extreme excitement, but just connecting to the world around us in any small capacity to feel alive, to feel like we are present in this life. And she is making it really clear to Maurice that she does not feel this way. But then she goes on to describe this experience that she had when she was a brand new teacher with this fellow teacher named Christina. Christina was clearly having a rough go of it for a few weeks, maybe even months. Grace and Christina weren't very close at the time, but it seemed like nobody else at work was really there for Christina either. So they approach Christmas break, and Grace encounters Christina in kind of like the lowest of lows that you're still able to like pull yourself out and be in public for. And says, hey, I can tell you're struggling. Why don't you come to my house for Christmas dinner? We'll do dinner. It'll just be the two of us. We'll play some games. We'll play music. We'll drink a lot of wine. We'll have a lot of fun. Christina agrees to do this. In this Christmas encounter, both Christina's and Grace's lives are changed forever. They just might not know it yet. But they discuss over many bottles of wine Christina's desire to be a singer. She sings for Grace, and it turns out she has a genuinely very good singing voice. And Christina talks about how she feels kind of trapped by the expectations of being a, logical, salary-earning member of society. I'm sure there are some of you that can feel that way, where it's like, why do I have to fit into this form of success when maybe my heart is telling me to do something very different? Christina's talking about this with Grace, and Grace essentially like encourages her to go explore it. And in that conversation, Christina tells Grace that she has always wanted to live in Ibiza, or maybe it's visit Ibiza. But as a result of, Grace encourages her. And then as a result of that encouragement, eventually after the school year's over, Christina picks up and moves to Ibiza. We never really, or rather, Grace never really hears from Christina again. They never really hang out one-on-one again outside of work, outside of the school. But Christina thinks of Grace often, it seems, and Grace, we know from Grace's perspective, thinks about Christina fairly often. During this Christmas dinner, Grace gives Christina her St. Christopher necklace, and that comes in as kind of an ongoing thing later. It is a major minor tidbit, which I love those kinds of almost Easter eggs in stories. It's going to pop up. It means something, but you don't know why yet. It's framed that way at the beginning of the book, and it comes into play much later in a way that has a lot more meaning than I think we might have expected it to. But St. Christopher, being the patron saint of wanderers, I think is really a beautiful allegory for both what Christina is telling Grace that she's feeling and what Grace is telling Maurice that she was feeling. So that is a running theme. This wandering, not wanderlust, but this in between, not ever feeling like you're exactly where you need to be, always kind of feeling like you're missing out just by a hair, but you don't know why and you don't know how. I think these are themes that not only are present throughout the book, but I think they're something that we all can identify with. And I know I've said that a couple times in a couple different ways already, but it is so human to feel loss. And it is especially human, I think, to feel loss of things that you don't even know you lost experiences, lost opportunity, lost potential. They're all so cerebral. But they can create such very real grief for us as human beings, as individuals. The rest of the book really explores Grace's own loss with that. Because fast forward many years later, Grace is in this, 1-bedroom apartment that she used to share with, she calls it a bungalow. I'm imagining it as an apartment. It might have a separate meaning in England. I'm apologizing for not having done that research before I started this recording. But she, many years later, is telling Maurice that she feels like the most apathetic person in the world. All she does is glaze over her eyes and watches TV all day. And she's not even really paying attention to the stories. So she's not even engaging in the stories of other people that's being presented to her as art. It is so, so, so similar to feelings that I've had before. Raise your hand if you feel like it's something that you can empathize with or sympathize with in your own experiences. But the crux of the story is that Christina has passed away. Grace doesn't really know why, and everybody's being pretty tight-lipped about it. Turns out she was lost at sea. And actual purposeful reasons for these guys right now, the air quotes. But because Christina has been pronounced dead, Grace has inherited her house in Ibiza. And Grace is like, what the hell? I had one meal with you. I had one night of fun with you in our 20s. Now I'm 70, 71, 72. And you give me a house? How? How is that even logical? Of course it's not logical. And that's why we have a good book on our hands. Against kind of her better judgment, Grace, because again, remember that Grace is just she's not grumpy. She's not a get off my lawn type, but she is so encumbered by her own grief and her own guilt that she has removed any opportunity for her to experience life in any way as enjoyable. So she's really kind of determined to stay put, but her curiosity gets the best of her, and she wants to go investigate what happened to her friend Christina from many years ago. And she wants to know why the hell that friend decided to give her a house. So Grace goes to Ibiza. Turns out this house is, I think when we talk about Ibiza, it's through the lenses of the Instagram reels of the ultra privileged, the glamorous, the, beach raves and all of those fun, you think Ibiza, I immediately think of Lindsay Lohan DJing. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's this bizarre world. Ibiza, as far as I'm aware, as far as I was aware before reading this book, is this party spot for celebrities, the mega wealthy, the mega privileged, right? Or a bunch of gays willing to go into financial debt in order to just party all night. Haven't been yet, but hello, I know you're out there. To my straight viewers, just trust that gay people love to go to Ibiza and party all night. Little tidbit for you. Little intro course to Homo 101. But she arrives at Christina's house, at now Grace's house in Ibiza, and it's this rundown, not a shack, but it's a very modest home. It's on the way she describes it is essentially right on a busy road in the middle of nowhere. She has to take a taxi cab to get there for the first time. She opens it's all when she opens the door to walk in, it's all musty and kind of looks like all of the fabrics, the couches, the throw blankets, the throw rug, all of these kind of just dusty, musty, 2-star Airbnb kind of accoutrement, right? Decorations. She's immediately wondering why the hell she decided to do this. But she finds this letter from Christina that was written, obviously, before Christina's death. And this letter acknowledges, from Christina's own voice, that she is going to die or disappear or her life on Earth will end. Her life on Earth will end. Very purposeful word choice. And in this letter, she kind of tries to convey the gratitude that she felt for Grace for that Christmas meal. She talks about how that changed the course of Christina's life for good, for both forever and for the better. For good. And in this letter, she has this kind of list of things that she wants Grace to do while she's on the island of Ibiza. And she knows, in telling Grace this, she knows that Grace might not stay forever. Grace definitely wasn't planning to. And then now with the state of this house, she's definitely not planning to. But she does decide to, she's got a couple days to kill. She flew all the way here. She doesn't like to fly, turns out. So she came all the way here and is like not eager to get back on a plane. So she's going to check out this list, and it is a breadcrumb trail that Christina has set for her. And eventually it leads her to this man named Alberto Ribas. Now, when Grace first came into Christina's home, one of the first things that she notices and really spends a lot of time engaging with are all of these portraits or photos that are framed on her wall. So it seems like this house, while maybe a little run down, was definitely a house full of love in one capacity or another. It seems like Christina has an ex-husband, a daughter that's probably grown now. Turns out she is grown now. And also there's this man that looks kind of scraggly. Looks kind of scraggly. And there's this name, Alberto Ribas, as the author of a book on Christina's bookshelf. So when these breadcrumbs point her to this man, Alberto Ribas, she's like, well, might as well. Several people along that breadcrumb trail have told her to specifically avoid Alberto Ribas. But some stuff happens where Grace is like, well, I can't not investigate now. I can't not talk to him now. It seems like he had a lot to do with the circumstances of Christina's disappearance, and her curiosity around figuring that out is the mystery that is driving her for the bulk of this book. So she meets Alberto. He's a wackadoodle, definitely beach hippie kind of guy. He's wearing cut off short denim shorts and wears a button up shirt but doesn't button it, and has a huge belly hanging over his pants and lots of chest hair. And when she meets him, he is literally the place he lives, his sleeping quarters are in this rundown shed with a stray mattress on it, and he shares it with a goat. This is the man. She describes him as piratey. She describes him as not smelling very good. She takes a lot of time to explain that, actually, at several points in the book. And for me personally, if you're a retro kind of Survivor fan, my immediate thought was Hispanic Rupert from All Stars 8. All Stars from season 8. I think he was on season 4 originally. Don't quote me on that. Rupert, if you're watching, I love you and adore you. You just seem like the piratey type, as you've self-branded. And so Alberto Ribas is very much my personal Rupert in this story. Grace's personal Rupert is probably more accurate. They kind of get entwined together. He convinces her to go deep sea diving with her in the middle of there's this rock formation island piece of Ibiza that's off the coast of it a bit, and apparently is very iconic to the people of Ibiza and to just the landmark and geography of Ibiza. Very recognizable in the same way that I would think Morro Bay Rock is very recognizable in Morro Bay or in SLO in California. She goes deep sea diving with this man at midnight per his request, kicking and screaming the whole way, but begrudgingly doing it. And no, she has not ever been scuba diving before. No, she does not have a scuba diving license. No, he doesn't seem interested in giving her a scuba diving license or any sort of lessons until they're out in the middle of this sea. But she does all of this anyway. Do it for the plot, really, is probably what's going on. But like, I like this idea that Grace is letting herself go a little bit. And it is truly a little bit at a time. We're picking away at that apathetic, kind of stodgy old lady that was so comfortable in her discomfort. And now suddenly it's like past midnight and she's 20 yards below the surface of the ocean. I have no idea if 20 yards is an accurate description of depth. Don't come for me. With this piratey old Rupert man. And it's also worth mentioning that along the way, along the way, Alberto has made it very clear that he's into some like odd stuff. Think like crystals and astrology, but like to the 100,000th degree. He's talking about powers and about alien species and soon we see why. But they deep sea dive and Grace is having this moment of like just amazement because a big part of, in the story at least, in the book at least, a big part of Ibiza's identity is this centuries old seagrass, sea meadow. So she sees this and her breath is taken away. And part of the reason she sees this is because this like ethereal light presents itself as a perfect sphere right in front of her, kind of mobs around to a couple different shapes. It's a cloud, it's a sphere again. It does all that kind of beautiful, I'm sure it would look great on CGI kind of thing. But it kind of comes into contact with Grace. In my head, I read it as like enveloping her quite literally. And then she wakes up in the hospital and is like, whoa, where the hell am I? Apparently Alberto, she like passed out a little bit and also passing out a little bit above land sounds like a nightmare, but passing out a little bit below water sounds like a true nightmare. So Alberto freaked out, took her to the ER. They gave her a health check. She seems totally fine, but they are about to do a brain scan. And that's when Alberto's like, we gotta go. They cannot scan your brain. And she's like, but what if something's wrong? And he's like, they will find something wrong. And that's why we have to go. And she's like, that seems like an absolute wrong reason to leave. I need to figure out what's wrong with my brain. And he's like, no, just trust me. We don't really know why Grace doesn't really know why she trusts him, but she trusts him. So she goes with him. They escape the doctor. Not nearly as dramatic as that sounds, but and then, I mean, Grace immediately, obviously, is angry with Alberto. And it is worth saying that at no point in this book, until probably the last quarter, does she even try to say something positive about him. She does not like this man. She knows that he was a good friend of her friend, Christina. So she continues to spend time with him and continue to give him space in her life and in her story in order to, again, satisfy this need to understand the mystery of Christina's disappearance. But she is fighting with him every second of the day. They do not get along. He doesn't care for her much either. Think like, I mean, beachy, hippie, piratey guy, Spanish, and then like stodgy, retired school teacher from England. Like, so the two of them are this unlikely couple and not romantic in any way, as made clear by both of them in many, many ways. But he kind of ropes her into this adventure of exploration. And it turns out that the light that she encountered and engaged with gave her some kind of superpowers. And it also turns out we come to find that light has actually been sent by an alien planet with the intention of doing good for humankind and our environment. And so its intention is to give the worthy enhanced mental abilities, and they'd spend a solid amount of time explaining that all humans have access to these mental abilities on some kind of percentage, but this just turns the dial up huge. So where it feeds into this idea that all of us are mentally connected, and with time and effort, practice, or just the right genetic switch up, we too could be X-Men. So that's where Grace is, and she's coming to terms with all of that. She runs away from Alberto for a little bit, but has this bizarre experience in a restaurant and an airport, and the driving her on the road, and that all point her to this kind of realization that she has these telekinetic powers, telepathic, premonition. She can see the future a little bit, a lot of it. She can see the past even when she wasn't there, so she can like touch somebody or be near somebody and see what experiences they have that have pushed them to this event, to their present. And then she can also kind of read other people's minds as well. And I said that already with telepathy, so forgive me. She has a hard time believing that, hard time stomaching it. I'm not going to go through the origin story part of this book, but she eventually gets very comfortable with this idea and gets very comfortable with Alberto's goal of essentially saving Ibiza from this corporate bad guy. And his name is Art Butler. He is like this think mega billionaire that wants, he's not think mega millionaire. He's almost a billionaire, and his Napoleon complex, he's like got 8,900 million, whatever that is. And he's like, if I have to get to a billion, I have to. So this is his personal motivation for driving all of this bad shit down the road. But essentially he wants to take this historic landmark, this nature preserve on Ibiza, that island rock formation off the coast where a couple different species call home. He wants to kill off all those species, flatten the top of the island, and then build this luxury extreme spa resort for the ultra rich. And just kind of his intention is to manufacture the natural wonders of Ibiza and the natural wonders of the world. He wants to kind of corporatize them, capitalize on them, quite literally, and make them these kind of softer, whitewashed versions of themselves. All while killing off some native species. It's awesome. One of the ones particularly in danger is this seagrass that we already discussed was so important to Grace, or moving rather to Grace. So there is, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there is like some spy stuff going on. Alberto introduces Grace to his daughter. Her name's Marta. She's, in addition to being a physicist and like brilliant and kind and sweet and a lesbian, she's also plays a major role in organizing a lot of the pro-environmental protests across the island over the course of many years. So she has worked with Christine in the past to develop large-scale protests that have worked successfully in the past. The way the book puts it is that the people of Ibiza have a history of rallying together against things that threaten their environmental kind of their natural wonder. Ironically, this super billionaire,
huge. He's huge. He's great. He's a super billionaire. He's going to do it all.
He is like, it's not the Four Seasons. It's not It's called the Eighth Wonders of the World. Whatever. Fuck Art Butler. So Marta, Alberto's daughter, Alberto, and Grace are now this trio, and they're all on their spy stuff. So that obviously requires a quick casino heist, and there's a lovely casino heist scene. It's like so Ocean's 11, but done by your grandma. I love it so much. Plus grandma with magic powers. Um, I adore it. I won't go into too much detail, but Art does come there, and there's a standoff. And in that standoff, we come to find that Art also has magic powers. And so he's used them for all of his evil deeds in the past, all of this corporate greed that he's throwing everywhere. He's killed off a couple of politicians that tried to stand in his way, and he's using these powers to threaten Alberto's daughter, Marta, because she's the main organizer of this protest. Now he's totally ready to use them against Grace as well. Eventually this protest happens, and they use this casino funding that like their heist funds, and they're able to stop the construction of this thing, but it does have quite a dramatic finish with Art. They won't go into spoilers there, but it does involve Grace tapping into the minds of every animal on the island. And there's this just like wonderfully absurd scene of like island solidarity. We're talking bees, we're talking mosquitoes, we're talking fish, we're talking man of war jellyfish, birds, whatever, what have you. So the bulk of what Grace and Alberto, blah blah. So Grace and Alberto are successful with Marta in stopping this environmental kind of murder of Ibiza. And then we're just left with the life stuff. And I do want to make it very clear that again, one of the reasons that Matt Haig is one of my favorite authors is that even though the extraordinary is happening in his stories, he never, ever, ever makes you forget that the reason that we're here is to explore ourselves. What makes us tick? What drives us? Where can we improve? And where are we struggling? As I mentioned, Grace she's a widow, a recent widow, and then also has had a child die. Her young child died. She carries immense grief about that, but she just like her narrative, and she does a really wonderful job of conveying this to Maurice. But Matt Haig does a really wonderful job of like really hitting it home for the reader. She has designed herself a prison of her own grief and her own guilt. And throughout this plot, throughout this kind of almost absurdist event, she learns to kind of let some of that go. She finds forgiveness for herself. Something that really moved me about that, while I have no children, and certainly haven't experienced the death of my own child, I think we trap ourselves. It's so easy for us to trap ourselves in this isolated discussion of what is and is not true. So for decades, she's been telling herself she's bad, she's bad, she's bad, she's bad, she's bad, she's bad, she's bad. Throughout this adventure she's on, she comes to realize, oh, there was shared blame for the death of her son. Neither of them are evil for that. It is a complete accident that their son died that way, but like there is shared guilt there. And maybe none of that guilt is rightly placed on themselves. Life happens. Life is ugly. Ugly things happen to the people that we love in life. And just because that happens, it does not mean that we made that decision. It does not mean we had power. I think it's interesting that Grace comes into this very real powers, magic powers, X-Men powers, whatever you want to call them. But it is in gaining all of that power that she does use for good, but it's in gaining all that power that she is able to realize that while she has power over many things, we don't have power over accidents. We don't have power over bad things happening to our loved ones. We are not that important. And I think that's a really interesting kind of, not moral, but reminder to all of us from the author to the reader. Bad things happen, and we should take, there are instances of responsibility needing to be taken, but like in the extreme ways that some of us take responsibility for things that we shouldn't, Matt's saying no. And Grace is saying, no, no more of that. You do not have power over a tornado hitting somebody's house. You can feel sad about that, but you can't feel guilt about it. And you can't feel it about the loss of a son. And you can't feel it about, there are just so many prisons that we build for ourselves by making ourselves more important to the event that we are feeling guilty about. And so I think Grace is coming to terms throughout this story to say, okay, I need to let that shit go because it's preventing me from living a really beautiful life. The book ends with Alberto passing from cancer that we knew happened. It's a plot point in the book, a minor plot point, but a driving factor for his character. But as he approaches his death, he and his daughter, Marta, and Grace all become sort of a family unit that takes care of one another, looks out for one another. After he's gone, the two of them remain sisters, is how they refer to one another. It's a really just beautiful kind of healing moment after like an absurd spy adventure with X-Men superpowers. It is a beautiful reminder that like life is life, but it means that like it has to end. And I know I sound so stupid hippie there, but the author does such a beautiful job of wrapping that up in a beautiful bow for you. I'm butchering it right now, but you are just left, you close the book and you're just left with the feeling of peace. You're left with this feeling of kindness for yourself, and with a little bit of hope that everything's going to be okay. For me, it also was like, hey, you need to kick it into high gear and just say yes to the crazy things. Stop worrying about where things might go wrong. Focus instead on how things can go right and see what that does for you. You know? Matt Haig, again, he's one of my favorite authors because he does this to me every time. And every time he does it in a way that I didn't know that I needed, slightly differently, different messaging, different morals, different what have you. But he does not shy away from this idea that we are people, that people are flawed, and that we need a reminder sometimes to check ourselves and just be kind to ourselves. And when we're being kind to ourselves, we're being kind to the people around us. Whew. This book I loved. I'm biased because I love all things Matt Haig. As you may remember, we're using the devil horns as our rating system. I'm going to give this a solid 7. I think it's whimsical, it's comforting, it's purposeful, it's emotional, but not in a way there's no triggers. You're going to feel the things that she's feeling, but you're not going to drown in that after you put the book down for a second. You'll take it with you in all of the exact right ways. And for that reason, it gets a high rating for me. And then because it was just an enjoyable damn read. It's fun. It's quirky. You get a good amount of sarcasm from Grace. You get a good amount of ridiculous from Alberto. You get a good amount of fun from just the experience of having magic powers. There was a 2-day stretch where I was like mad at myself that I didn't have magic powers. All we want, just give me the ability to do fun, weird stuff with my mind, right? It's fun. It's escapist while it's also, it's escapism, but you're realizing where you escaped to is yourself. And I think that is just the best kind of book. So 7 devil horns out of several devil horns. Yes. 7 devil horns out of 10 for my friend Matt Haig and his newest book, The Life Impossible. If you have any kind of weird experiences like this that you want to share with me, let me know. And otherwise, it was so fun to talk about this with you. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.